Sold for money by my own family, now my sister is plotting to steal my billionaire husband. They think they can crush me by turning him into a cheater and making her his wife. But this time I won't go down without a fight. So when my father announced my marriage one evening, it wasn't love or concern that prompted it. It was a business deal, a trade-off to secure their future. "You're getting married," he said, barely looking up from his newspaper. I blinked. "What?" My mother slid a document across the table. "It's final. The papers are signed." Jiyeon smirked behind her teacup. She already knew. "To who?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Hwang Jae-min," my father answered. The air left my lungs. Hwang Jae-min, CEO of HW Group, cold, ruthless and filthy rich. A man feared by his competitors and respected by the entire business world. "You're selling me," I whispered. "Don't be dramatic," my mother sighed as if I were embarrassing her. "This is the best thing that could ever happen to you." If it were Jiyeon, she would have had him wrapped around her little finger by now. Jiyeon laughed, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "Honestly, you should be grateful. If it were me, I'd have made him fall for me instantly." That's when it clicked. They would have never done this to her. Only me. From the moment I was born, I was nothing more than an inconvenience to my parents. Jiyeon, my older sister, was their golden child, the one who could do no wrong. She got the best clothes, the best schools, the best everything. And me? I got whatever she outgrew or didn't want anymore. My allowance? Handed straight to Jiyeon because she deserved it more. Even the money I earned from part-time jobs was taken away. "Why should we waste money on you?" My mother sneered when I asked for new school shoes. "Jiyeon is our future. You're just here wasting our money." I was just here. I expected a suffocating mansion, a controlling old man, and a life of misery. Instead, I was escorted to a luxurious penthouse, and waiting for me was him. Jae-min stood near the window, tall and sharp-eyed, dressed in all black. He looked more like a king than a businessman. When he turned to me, his gaze was unreadable. "You're finally here." I am," I stammered. He walked over slowly, his presence commanding. "Let's be clear about one thing. This marriage is a business deal. I don't expect love, nor do I offer it. Stay out of my way and you'll have nothing to worry about." His words stung more than they should have, but I nodded. Understood. And just like that, with one signature, I became the wife of a billionaire. At first, life with Jae-min was exactly as he promised, cold and distant. He provided everything, wealth, protection, a life of luxury, but emotionally, he was untouchable. I refused to be just a shadow. Instead of wasting away, I used the resources around me. I learned business, worked under his company, and proved my worth. Then, one night at a gala, a famous director noticed me and offered me a role in a drama. People laughed at first. The CEO's wife playing pretend. But I worked harder than anyone. Soon, I wasn't just Jaemin's wife. I was Korea's rising star. By the time my father's company went bankrupt, my mother lost her influence. Jiyeon's boyfriend, the same one she cheated on me with, dumped her the second their money ran out. I thought they'd disappear. I was wrong. One evening at a business event, I heard an all-too-familiar voice. "Ani?" I turned around. Jiyeon. Gone was the designer clothing and expensive jewelry. She wore a simple dress, her makeup slightly smudged. But her eyes? Still filled with jealousy. "You look different," I said, taking a sip of my champagne. She gave me a fake smile. "I'm so happy for you. You're so lucky, getting married to Jaemin Appa." I narrowed my eyes. She was up to something. I found out later that night. I stepped into Jaemin's office to find Jiyeon standing too close to him. "Appa, please, just listen to me," she whined. "I know you don't love my sister. I can be better for you." Jaemin didn't even look at her. Instead, he glanced at me, standing in the doorway. "Your sister is pathetic," he muttered. Jiyeon's face turned red. "What? I don't entertain trash," he cut her off coldly. "Get out." That night I leaked everything, her bullying, her schemes, her fake personality. She woke up the next morning to see her name trending online. Her reputation? Destroyed. I thought it was over. But my family was shameless. 1 week later, they showed up at my home, my parents and Jiyeon, standing in the living room like they belonged there. "You should be grateful," my mother hissed. "If we hadn't married you off, you'd be nothing. You don't deserve this life." Jiyeon snapped, her voice shaking with rage. It should be me. My father turned to Jaemin. She's ungrateful. Jiyeon is the better daughter. More beautiful, more charming. Jaemin set down his glass with a clink. Enough, he said, his voice calm but ice-cold. Jaemin, my mother started. You will not stand here and insult my wife, he cut her off sharply. She is my choice. My wife. And I don't care about your delusions. Their faces twisted in anger. But they still didn't leave. They stayed. They leeched off me, finding every excuse to be in my home to try and steal my life. Until one night. We were having dinner when my mother, thinking she was being subtle, heavily insulted me in front of Jaemin. You're just lucky, she scoffed, cutting into her steak. No matter what you do, you'll never be as good as Jiyeon. Jaemin slammed his fork down, the sound echoing in the silent room. Enough. His voice was dangerously low. My parents froze. Jaemin stood, his cold gaze locking onto them. Get out. Now. You can't, Jiyeon started. And before you leave, he continued, voice sharp, pay back every single cent you've taken from my wife since you've been living here. Their faces drained of color. You have 1 hour, he finished. Or I'll make sure you regret it. For the first time they looked afraid. But of course they have no shame. You better convince him, my mother hissed. If it weren't for us you wouldn't even be here. Don't you dare to throw us out. Go talk to your husband. Just because you are famous you can't do anything because you will always be a worthless trade. Jiyeon snapped, her voice shaking with rage. I will ruin your life. You ugly slave. I sighed. I was waiting for this. I turned my phone screen toward them. A live broadcast. The entire conversation had been recorded and sent to the media. Jiyeon gasped, stumbling backward. Why you wouldn't? Too late, I said calmly. Jaemin smirked, standing beside me. I would have destroyed you myself, but it seems my wife handled it well. My parents froze. Jiyeon covered her mouth in horror as her phone exploded with messages. Next moment, their entire past was exposed. They weren't just ruined, they were done. And 1 hour later they were gone, and this time they didn't come back. That night, as we sat on the rooftop, Jaemin turned to me. Do you regret marrying me? He asked. I looked at him, the man who had always protected me, the one who saw my worth when no one else did. I smiled softly. No. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. His gaze softened and for the first time he reached for my hand. I wasn't the weak, unwanted girl they threw away. I was unstoppable. And with Jaemin by my side I was never alone. If you like this story, help us bring you more by liking and subscribing.